There is something special about a Stanley Kubrick film. Coming from a background in still photography, Kubrick was able to create memorable and evocative images that have the ability to burn themselves into the mind of the viewer. The range in his filmography is unmatched, covering a vast array of genres, from the science fiction epic, to psychological horror, to black comedy. He was known for being a perfectionist, making his actors do dozens of takes for even the shortest of shots. Along with his frequent use of classical music, Kubrick has created a style that can never truly be replicated. To celebrate this master of the craft of filmmaking, I wanted to rank each of his films from worst to best. I want to clarify that this is not an objective list. A list like that can never really exist, so this is my personal ranking. And I also want to say that I've never read any of the books or short stories many of these films are based off of. Fear and Desire, Kubrick's debut film, is messy and amateur. It's a film that spends more time trying to portray a point through large sweeping statements than through the subtlety of actions, characters, or cinematography. At the film's core is the idea that in war, humans regress to an animalistic state, but the film never really explores that thesis. It is more content to have its generic characters spout an array of pretentious statements than to reflect on or explore the ideas that these statements present.
I'm not sure yet whether even we've come back. I think we've all traveled too far from our own private boundaries to be certain about these other things anymore.
No character in the film stands out from another, leading to a severe lacking in dramatic stakes as the film meanders from plot point to plot point, never stopping to develop any of the characters. Along with the fact that the audio and what the characters are saying is frequently mismatched due to a bad dubbing process, Fear and Desire proves itself to be a mess. At the same time, there's a heart to it all. While Kubrick has since called the film his worst and has attempted to destroy every print, the passion that the cast and crew had when shooting shines through. There's a sincere effort here that makes even some of the film's worst moments watchable. Killer's Kiss, Kubrick's second film, comes across as a reaction to Fear and Desire. Fear and Desire was criticized for a generic plot, so Killer's Kiss tells its narrative in a non-linear way, skipping backwards and forwards through time. Fear and Desire was also criticized for its slow pace, as it dragged its feet from plot point to plot point, so Killer's Kiss fills its 70-minute runtime with fast-paced action sequences, from rooftop chases to boxing matches. The problem with this fast pace is that Kubrick never lets us know his characters. Even in a scene where a character reveals their tragic backstory, Kubrick makes the monologue a voiceover over a ballet routine. He is so concerned with losing his audience that he never gives the characters any time to breathe. It's a problem that becomes more apparent as the film goes on, as I had no emotional connection to our leads, meaning I was less invested than I should have been in the climax of the film. Killer's Kiss feels like the first time the audience gets a glimpse at modern Kubrick, and it's through the film's gorgeous cinematography. Kubrick captures the grimy and dirty New York with style and precision. The lighting in this film is exceptional, as Kubrick takes full advantage of the film's black and white presentation. Despite how pulpy and melodramatic the film can be, Killer's Kiss is full of noir-style charm and fast-paced action that makes it an enjoyable watch. But it's only when you consider the film a stepping stone in Kubrick's career does it become anything special. Spartacus is a massive film, not just in length, although it's close to 3.5 hours long, but in scope. The production design is elaborate and detailed. Each location immerses the viewer further into the time period as the architecture of the Roman Empire fills every frame. It's not just the set design that makes the film grandiose, but the epic battle sequences that include hundreds of men. It's a film of such immense scope that it is genuinely awe-inspiring at times, and worth a watch for that reason alone. The problem is that the film is so focused on being larger than life that it forgets to make its characters interesting. The film has a massive cast of bland characters. Spartacus is not a person that I was particularly invested in, and his death had no emotional weight. His relationship with his wife Verinia was a hollow attempt to find any semblance of emotion, and the relationship made me want to check my watch more than anything. I was invested in the movement that these characters are a part of, as I hoped to see the enslaved achieve the rebellion, but I was not invested in the characters in this movement. I believe others feel the same way as myself, seeing as the film's most iconic moment, the scene where the previously enslaved gladiators pretend to be Spartacus to protect one of their own, is the climactic moment of the group's growth and not a point in Spartacus's character arc. Kubrick focuses his time not on the characters, but on the meticulously crafted world that they live in and the movement that they are a part of. Spartacus feels sterile. It's a Kubrick film in name only, as it lacks the innovation, experimentation, or even the emotion that his other films contain. It was the director's only for-hire gig, and it shows, as it feels like Kubrick put little passion into this film. Perhaps all the Kubrick flair was destroyed in the muddling of executives, but as the film stands, it is far from the quality of his many other, better works. The Killing. Kubrick's take on a heist film is a large step up from his prior films. I was excited to watch this film, both as a fan of Kubrick and as a fan of Quentin Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs, a movie that The Killing directly inspired. The film is a simple, but tense and fast-paced story about a group of men planning to rob a racetrack and how that heist goes horribly, horribly wrong. The tension is built up very well as the heist is methodically planned out, but is given just enough room for error to occur, keeping the audience on the edge of their seats until the final moments of the film. The biggest problem with the movie is a lack of depth. It's a very enjoyable film set around an interesting idea for a heist, and Kubrick's techniques build tension very well, but at the end of the day, there's no part of it that sticks in your mind like other Kubrick films. There's no inherent themes to be found, and none of the characters really evolve past the stereotypes that inspired them. It's a fun concept that is executed very well, but I just wish there was more meat on the bones of this film. I'd recommend The Killing to fans of heist movies and fans of the noir genre, but it's not a film that I see myself rewatching anytime soon. When I think of Paths of Glory, I think of the massive battle scene. The men running towards an uncertain future that neither them nor us as the audience can see. Men drop like flies from bullets we never saw coming with the goal of claiming the anthill. It's a brutal scene that shows the visceral qualities of war. These men are struggling and dying for a few meters of land in a hill in the middle of a wasteland. It's not just this desperate battle that has a gross quality, but the trenches as well. They are less a spot to hide for cover, but a big hole for men to wait for death. It's made apparent in this first act how war is a hellish experience, as soldiers speak with the pain that comes with death before they charge into the unknown. Paths of Glory is about how war dehumanizes the people in it, reducing them to pieces of an elaborate chess game. The story is structured on a desperate attempt to save the lives of 3 innocent men who are being killed because of a cowardice accusation. These men weren't cowards, and those accusing them are aware of that, as they are picked out of their squads either at random or to cover up a higher-up's mistake. When the trial is rigged, the men die. They do not die because of their cowardice, but to motivate troops away from future cowardice. The soldiers have become dehumanized by those who outrank them. They have become pawns to be sacrificed for the military's greater good. It also paints a clear picture of how those in power can forget their morals if it allows for personal gain. Paths of Glory is a great anti-war film, Kirk Douglas' best performance, and a shocking portrayal of battle and how it dehumanizes its participants and its planners. Lolita is an odd film to talk about. It's the film in this list that is the likeliest to change positions in the future. It has the skeleton of something incredible. The puzzle pieces are present to create a masterful puzzle. The film gives a sickening look into the psyche of Professor Humbert, a man who lusts after a high school girl. The acting is terrific as James Mason portrays a sinister pedophile with an odd aura of suave that draws in the audience and other characters. His chemistry with Stu Lyon, the young actress who plays the titular character and the victim of Humbert's desire, is excellent as she gives a great performance that is charming and sympathetic. Kubrick's direction and black and white cinematography give this film a great look with many memorable shots. The music is great as the compositions fit every scene. It's this obvious artistic quality that elevates the film. It's a story that sounds so pulpy, as if it was made for the sole purpose of shocking an audience that would see it alongside other exploitation films. My issue with Lolita is that there's nothing being said. It's 2.5 hours of seeing the world through the eyes of a disgusting human being for no apparent reason. I didn't gain anything from the experience. I don't believe Kubrick wanted me to feel sympathetic for Humbert, and I certainly didn't. Lolita was a film crippled by the censorship of the time, and perhaps the film's message was lost in the restraints forced upon Kubrick. Maybe I'll approach and discover a meaning on a subsequent viewing, but until then, Lolita is a puzzle missing its final crucial piece. A piece that would have fulfilled the film's potential to be something truly fantastic. I do not like period pieces. They are long, and they are slow, and they are often very pretentious. And that being said, Barry Lyndon is an absolute delight. For a film that clocks in at over 3 hours, it is impressively able to remain entertaining. It's a gorgeous film, as every shot looks like a period-appropriate painting. That's the point too, as Kubrick will often zoom out of the images he creates to disguise movement and make the picture appear still. Kubrick also uses these static paintings to frame his protagonist, the film's titular character, Barry Lyndon. Barry is uninteresting and passive. He feels small and unworthy of the structure of a grand epic. There is nothing exceptional about Barry. He's just pushed from place to place. However, this is the point that Kubrick is trying to make, that almost every person is inconsequential to the greater story of humanity. It's a deconstruction of the genre, as instead of using the story of immense scope to make Barry seem important, it uses this scope to engulf him, and show him just how insignificant he really is. This is expressed both in how small and static Vera is in his still painting shots, but in the film's epilogue, that reads how none of the characters in this film achieved anything of any importance, and all are equal now. I like this idea in concept, but it falters in execution. I think an interesting protagonist is important in a great story, and especially important in a film as big as this. Vera could have anchored the story and given it a semblance of emotion, but he's boring and he's bland and he's passive. I still think Barry Lyndon is a great film, but its central idea is at odds with what would make it a more enjoyable experience. Doctor Strangelove is the funniest movie about nuclear annihilation. It speaks to Kubrick's immense talent as not just a director, but a writer, that he was able to craft the dark satire about the end of the world at the height of the Cold War. In a time where fear of mass destruction was at an all-time high, Kubrick uses Doctor Strangelove to point out the absurdities of the situation. The film is genuinely funny at times, and contains one of the greatest performances of all time. Peter Sellers plays 3 of the film's wildly different main characters. It is not only a testament to Sellers' range that he's able to play the eccentric former Nazi scientist Dr. Strangelove, the soft-spoken straight man President Merkin Muffley, and the frantic group captain Lionel Mandrake, but also a testament to his raw talent, that he somehow has more chemistry with himself than most actors do with each other. There are scenes when Sellers bounces between playing an outlandish character and a serious character with ease. Each character that Sellers plays is well written and distinguishable from the rest of the cast. The film contrasts with almost every other comedy film visually, as it is shot similar to a noir, with characters entering scenes by emerging from shadows or bright lights. The set design, particularly the imposing war room, takes advantage of this style, with harsh corners that are complemented by the hard lighting. It is a film that, by playing the material as straight as possible, manages to reveal the absurdity of that material. Doctor Strangelove is a visually unique satire of the Cold War, containing an amazing 3 performances by Peter Sellers. There is little new that I can add to the conversation of 2001: A Space Odyssey. The film is one of the best looking of all time, as every frame is visually impressive and rich with detail. The shots in space are particularly impressive. They are empty black canvases filled with vividly colored planets and sleek space shuttles. Many shots in this film are not just visually impressive, but technically impressive. When watching, I was frequently in awe, not just of the film, but of how challenging it must have been to make. The insides of the spaceships look so genuine, like a future just out of reach. These outstanding visuals are often paired with an array of classical music that enhances the film. The spaceships, when paired with the music, seem to dance among the stars. Just like the music, the tech of the future is elegant. It would not be an exaggeration to call 2001 a polarizing film. It is slow and deliberate, as Kubrick takes painstaking care to show the complexity of the technology on screen. It is often criticized by audiences for lacking in narrative or characters, but I believe the absence of these things is intentional. Kubrick attempted to make a film that would invoke the emotions of fear and awe in his audience, the same feelings the film's characters have towards their technology. At its core, 2001: A Space Odyssey is a simple story about our relationship to technology. From the apes of the opening sequence learning to protect themselves with tools, to the humans of the future using galactic ships for exploration. Kubrick draws a comparison between how different eras of life use technology as tools through one of the most iconic cuts in cinematic history, as he cuts from the ape's first weapon, the bone, to the human race's most advanced weapon yet, a nuclear launch platform. The empty and emotionless dialogue the characters speak is often contrasted with technological sophistication. Kubrick is saying how despite the tech innovation, human relationships seem to have been limited and damaged. The people in the film have become so reliant on technology that it has come to define their lives. Every moment and every conversation leads back to the technology that the characters in the film possess. It is only fitting then that the only character that shows any semblance of emotion is the artificial intelligence HAL 9000.
I'm afraid. I'm afraid, Dave.
Hal is not only the most human character in the film, but also the character who is in control of the stoic and unemotional astronauts for much of his screen time. In the world of the film, technology controls human thought and behavior, but how far is that from the reality that we are faced with today? Whether you think of 2001: A Space Odyssey as an examination of our relationship with technology throughout our evolution, or as a warning about the dangers of said technology, you cannot deny the sheer scope and magnitude of the film. 2001: A Space Odyssey is a hypnotic film that immerses the viewer in its awe-inspiring world. Full Metal Jacket feels like two entirely different films melded into one. That's not a criticism, but an observation of the feeling that many who watch this film will have. The first half is the infamous boot camp sequence. It's clean, it's neat, and it's orderly. The locations are sterile, and it's so repetitive that it lures the audience into a trance. That trance is shattered with a bang. The second half of the film is Vietnam, a location that appears as hell personified, as war or the remnants of war fill every frame. It's chaotic and untidy and as far from orderly as possible, yet these two halves fit into a cohesive whole and make each other stronger. Like my favorite war movie, Apocalypse Now, Full Metal Jacket is about dehumanization and how a person's morals and values can be stripped away. While other war films do show the effects of dehumanization, Kubrick takes a more subtle approach by asking the audience the question of if the soldiers are numbed by the atrocities of war or if they are numbed by their training. This clear divide in the two-act structure is not a gimmick, but a way to help express the major question that Kubrick is trying to present to the audience. This idea is wrapped up in Kubrick's always stellar direction and eye for visuals, as well as some terrific performances by Vincent D'Onofrio and R. Lee Emery. Full Metal Jacket is an exceptional film and one of the best films to grace the war genre. A Clockwork Orange is one of the most unsettling movies of all time. Its world is unnatural by design, with the garish colors of house interiors contrasted with the harsh grey concrete buildings shown in the exterior shots. Watching Alex DeLarge's actions always feels gross. Alex is a sadistic individual whose favorite pastimes include rape and assault. This character, as disturbing as he is also mesmerizing as he draws you into his world. As the film goes on, you begin to cling to each word in his strange dialect. I believe this is mostly due to Malcolm McDowell's bizarre performance that perfectly captures the crazed essence of the character. At the film's core is the question of free will and its limits. The film raises the question, do we as people do good because it's the right thing to do, or do we do good because we are forced to out of fear of punishment? While I don't necessarily agree on the nihilistic conclusion that Kubrick comes to, it is an interesting idea that is explored in a creative way. Throughout the film, we see different states of Alex's own freedom that allows us to reflect on this question. Alex's freedom varies from limitless, to forced containment, to forced conformity. The government attempts to solve the problem of Alex's sadistic behavior by subduing his free will and forcing him to change and think artificially. He's a living person, pressured to conform and made to behave and think robotically. Alex is a Clockwork Orange. The Shining is Stanley Kubrick's most haunting film. It is a story with so many layers and mysteries that it draws the audience in and never lets go. What at first glance is the story of a family watching a hotel over the winter twists itself into something so much more disturbing. The film taps into a real visceral horror through Jack Nicholson's character, Jack Torrance. In lesser horror films, the villain can be defeated or explained away. Once Norman Bates' mental condition is explained, or once Jason Voorhees is killed for a third time, these characters cease to be scary. Jack Torrance cannot simply be explained away or killed, as he is an idea. Just like Wendy and Danny, so many people are trapped in these situations of domestic abuse. At its core, The Shining is the story of a man who wants to harm his family, something so disturbing and unnatural that it remains scary long after the film's runtime and emerges again on subsequent viewings. This idea, personified in the character of Jack Torrance, is acted out brilliantly by Jack Nicholson, who plays into the maniacal and unhinged nature of the character. There's an unsettling and uncanny nature to the acting on screen. Kubrick would make his actors do dozens of takes. In the latter takes, the actors would begin to use less conventional ways to portray their emotions. The editor would then use these more disturbing and unnatural takes to make it seem as if the Overlook Hotel really was distorting the Torrances. The Overlook Hotel is a character in itself, a never-changing labyrinth of corridors and rooms that we pray are empty. Around every corner awaits a new mysterious entity. Ghosts of two twin girls, an elderly naked woman in room 237, a man in a bear suit engaged in sexual activity with a hotel guest, all lend credence to the idea that there may be more, that around every corner hides another entity that will torment the Torrances, creating an anticipation that never really lets up, stoking the film in palpable dread. If the Overlook Hotel is a character, then the score is its pulse. Before shooting, Kubrick showed the cast and crew his favorite film, David Lynch's Eraserhead, a film that uses similar techniques of constant ambient sound to create dread. While we may not always be able to see the danger around the Torrances, we can always hear it. It's a heartbeat thumping louder and louder in anticipation as it narrows in on its helpless prey. It's booming and it's droning, filling every scene it is in with tension. It is less music than an assortment of noises used to frighten and disturb. The Shining is the greatest horror film ever made. In a genre with so many dated films, The Shining remains timeless with its unnatural performances and ever-present dread. Eyes Wide Shut, Stanley Kubrick's final film, is one of the greatest films ever made. The movie is an inescapable nightmare that follows Dr. Bill Hartford on his night-long odyssey through a neon-lit New York City. It's Kubrick's most misunderstood and underappreciated film. Many confuse Eyes Wide Shut as a tale about sex, but I believe it is more about class, paranoia, and insecurity. These themes are told through the point of view of the film's amoral protagonist, Dr. Bill Hartford, a character who is wandering the grimy streets of New York in search of a sexual encounter after hearing his wife once lusted after another man. The film not only gives us a glimpse into the film's nightmare reality, but into the head of this irrational main character as he is driven to achieve a self-destructive goal out of his own paranoia and insecurity. This self-destructive goal leads him to discover a dark secret about the wealthy elite, that many of them are part of masked orgies where humans are bought and sold like products. The idea of a class structure is prominent throughout the film. Almost every scene involves a transaction of money or showcases a person's economic status. People are used by those with more money than them. Bill hires a prostitute before getting a poor business owner to open early, and a wealthy client pays the doctor, under the table, when he covers up the overdose of their escort. The antagonistic force in this film is just the wealthy elite who exploit their money for personal pleasure at the expense of others. Yet, this money separates them so far apart from society that they appear like Lovecraftian entities with limitless power and incomprehensible motives. They cannot be reached, let alone reckoned with. They don't even appear human beneath their blank, expressionless masks. Kubrick captures the streets of New York like a fever dream. The way Kubrick captures the set of the New York block is mesmerizing. The film is lit like a nightmare, as buildings are coated in shadow and characters are illuminated by the garish glow of Christmas decorations and neon lights. The film is even structured like a terrible dream, as it feels split up into distinct sequences that blur together. The same city block is reused many times to make New York feel like an inescapable labyrinth, where something is wrong, but you just can't quite place your finger on it. Eyes Wide Shut feels like a dream that you can't quite wake up from, but one that sticks with you when you finally do. And that's my ranking. Be sure to see all these films to form your own opinion, and as always, have a good night.